really, so we're just getting onto the live stream, and then I'm going to bring this up. I want to talk about the article that just got released. It's so cool. I mean, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but that's probably where I'll just start and give you an opportunity to speak to it. Okay, looks like we're getting on. I've been learning. So good. Okay. Okay, pause the live. We're on live. Okay, it's happening. Hi, Braeden.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, let me open you up so I can open this screen up so I can see you better. I'm pumped to be talking with you right now.
I'm excited too.
I'm just really excited that we're spending this time. I just want to thank you for spending this time, because you are being asked, and Black people are being asked to have a lot of conversations right now. And so I don't take it lightly that you're willing to share yourself, your thoughts, your energy with us, because there's a lot that's being asked of you. So I just want to acknowledge that right out the gate, that you're having this conversation not because you have to, but because you're choosing to. And I think that is so powerful, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course. I've been asked by a lot of people over the years and recently to share my story, and I think it's humbling. It's a cool thing. I think the culmination of those things ultimately leads you to a place where you have somewhat of a platform, right? I don't have the same platform, of course, that like a Colin Kaepernick or, a professional athlete has, but I have some form of a platform. And I think when you have a platform, however that's happened organically or whatever, you have a duty to do as much good as you can with it. I think what's motivated me to keep telling my story is just that I have folks reach out to me all the time saying, hey, I want to do this. Can I do that? Is that okay? Is this something I can do? What do you think? And my answer is always, yeah, of course you can. Here's how you should think about that. And here's how you might approach that. But that's the cool thing, is people kind of look at my story and they're like, that doesn't make sense. That shatters my worldview of what makes sense and what's realistic, right? And I think there's a lot of folks who have this narrow-minded vision of what they can accomplish and what's normal and what is possible for them in their life based on their socioeconomic status, based on how they were raised, based on what their parents told them that they could accomplish. What their friends say at school, right? If they say, hey, I want to do this, and their friends are all like, no way, that sounds crazy, you can't do that, then a lot of people, their whole worldview is shattered at that point. And I try to shatter the negative worldview. And I do that as a teacher as well. A lot of my students will say some of the same things, I couldn't go to law school. I just couldn't. And I try to be just as critical with them on their negative views about themselves as people are about positive views, right? If I was to say something really positive about myself, something so positive that it's whoa, really? We will all, as a society, it's just human nature, we will be very quick to ask tough questions and criticize. Right. And make sure, really, you think that? What about this? And share our worries. We'll be very quick to share our worries and our doubts. But I think that when we talk about positive ideas about ourselves and things that are that err on the side of optimism, we're less inclined to those same negative things kind of pop up, right? What about this? What about that? If it's something negative, we're less inclined to criticize a negative idea, right? And if it's negative, we should criticize it the same way. Really?
This critical thinking you're talking about, absolutely love it. Amazing. I think it's brilliant. It's a really big foundation of what coaching is about. So I'm totally yeah, Braeden, preach.
Yeah.
It's great. But this critical thinking, what's the outcome that is leading you to be inspired to take it? So, when you think, oh, I actually want to be just as critical or thought-provoking around the negative that comes up as the positive, what's the goal? What's the vision that's inspiring that?
Well, I think for me personally, right, almost everything about my life right now, it would have been unfathomable, not just for me, but for anybody who knew me at various points in my life. It's because it didn't make sense statistically, right? And I think looking at the number, we have to be objective because we're smart people. We all have a duty, I believe, to use objective, reasonable, pragmatic thinking, be logical, right? Run through it. We need to do that, but we need to truly do that. And I think we don't. And we think that we're being pragmatic, but we're actually not. Because I'll give you a perfect example. Not to retell my story over and over, but when I played basketball while in law school, it was something that if you looked at the stats was just not going to happen. There was at that time, there was not one men's NCAA Division I basketball player in law school. There was not one. And I think that the obvious conclusion to jump to at that point is to say, well, that can't be done. And I think it's really simple. Just nope, like move on, like next idea, right? And I wasn't willing to do that. And I think that came from a kind of an evolution of ideas and ways of approaching problems. But I think that's what I want to harness. Like that's what I want to package and preach is like that idea that here, let me explain. So here's the problem with the statistic. Okay. So yes, there was nobody currently doing it, but let's add more data because there's more data to add, right? Okay. So I was about to graduate 2 years early. So how many, first of all, men's NCAA student athletes graduated 2 years early and had 2 years of eligibility left, right, to potentially get a scholarship. So how many of those folks were there? Maybe there's not, right? Already, maybe there's nobody who actually fits into your category, right? For any statistic to be relevant to you. The other factor is how many, to the extent that there are other folks in that category, how many, and maybe we even widen it just to be safe. Maybe we say 1 year, even if you graduate 1 year early, okay? And that gives you, because by the way, you don't have an opportunity to play while in law school unless you were at least graduating 1 year early, okay? So let's widen it. Let's say it's 1 year, right? So we look at everybody, and let's say there's a couple folks in that group, right? Now we got to narrow it further. How many of those folks want to go to law school and have applied and have tried and have been rejected, right? How many people are there, right? How many, because that's where you're going to be. And if there's nobody there, then again, there's no statistics that can possibly apply to you, right? So, and I think the more that I asked questions and the more that I kind of walked down that path, I knew that I was kind of alone there. And that can make you feel really vulnerable and give you a lot of anxiety. But I think at the same time, that can be exciting because you know that, hey, like this is actually possible. Like there's very few people actually in this zone.
Braeden, I love it because what is coming up here is I'm so confident and able to tap into my own personal story. Like what you did was go, no, I'm not a statistic. We're not in statistics because we have our own individual story. And at the same time, what you're actually doing is also living out a universal story, which is, that hero's journey, that willingness to take on trial and tribulation, to maybe be in an uncomfortable situation, to be in potentially uncomfortable situations, and to really put a lot of reliance on yourself. That's really beautiful. So there's like two things going on. There's a lot of personal, this is my story, and I know my story so well, and I know that I'm capable of this. And so the statistics aren't going to bother me. Right. And I can be a part of a lineage of people who have done phenomenal things. People are doing phenomenal things every day. Right.
Well, so to that point, that's a really interesting point, right? Because you talk about your own personal story and your own view of yourself, right? And I think that there's an error on the side of negative a lot. And I spoke of this a little bit right earlier already, but I think that is a powerful thing for me. And it's not that you're always going to be right. It's not that your confidence is always going to be proven true, right? It's not that you're perfect. It's that, you know what, like I love myself and I'm going to err on the side of a positive, here. Like, I'm just gonna err on the side that I can do this, and maybe I can't, right? And so maybe I'll be wrong, but what do I lose by believing in myself, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's the brave choice, right? When we choose it without love in our hearts for ourselves, it's really from fear, and terror.
Mhm.
So the NBA announced recently that players are going to be able to put phrases instead of their names on their jersey. And you talked about using a platform. So players are stepping up, wanting to use their platform, and they're coming up with these phrases that they want to put on their jerseys. And you've presented maybe some more. This is where your beautiful gift of critical thought is coming through, and you've suggested some different types of phrases. So speak to us about that. Tell us, your thoughts on what's going on in the NBA and what this means for the movement. And yeah, I love what you're thinking on it. So I'd love to share it with people that are tuning in.
Yeah, so the NBA is, in all sports leagues are trying to figure out from a big picture perspective, because we got to start big and then kind of zone in on what's happening. From a big picture perspective, sports leagues are thinking about how they're gonna deal with protests, right? They all kind of think of the NFL and what happened with Colin Kaepernick, and it wasn't great, right? I think that there's lots of regrets on the NFL side with respect to how Colin Kaepernick was treated. He was, I don't think that this is a hot take, right? I think that was wrong. I think that it's wrong the way he was treated. And I think that the league was really cowardly in the way that they treated him and the way that they engaged with this issue. And there's a lot of backpedaling happening now. And I think the NBA is starting to kind of look at this and say, okay, let's not do that. And we know that Black Lives Matter and racial justice, social issues with regards to race relations is a big issue right now. And how can we get ahead of that? And how can we not make mistakes that have been made by other large sports leagues, right? And I think this is a great idea. It allows athletes, because again, I talked earlier, you have a platform and athletes should be allowed to use their platform for something good like this, right? They use their platform every day when they post pictures on Instagram posing beside their Ferraris. That's great. That's their lifestyle. It's sweet. Let them do something really positive with this as opposed to just kind of flaunting wealth. This is a great way for them to use their platform to do something positive, right? And a lot of these names on the back of jerseys, I'll name a couple of them. I can't breathe, justice, equality, enough, power to the people, justice now, say her name, liberation, hear us, respect us, listen, stand up, anti-racist, how many more, right? There's a lot of these, and I think that they're all great. I think that they're all terrific. However, I think that there's another level, there's another step of discourse that needs to take place in this country and in every country, because I think that at the end of the day, this is a humanity issue. This isn't a US issue. I think the US deals with a lot of the negative history and narratives that kind of build on top of that because of what's happened in this country. But unconscious bias happens everywhere. I mean, I know growing up in Alberta, there was a lot of that. I dealt with a lot of that, and it was hard. But what I've learned over the years is that the way to actually get where you want, because people are, in my view, and people have different views. My view is that people are generally good. People want to be good. People want to be good people, right? And no one wants to be racist. I mean, not no one. There are, but very small. Most people want to be good people, and most people don't view themselves as racist. However, and then when I say most people, in this context, I'm speaking of most white people. However, right, most white people have, at some point, been unconsciously biased. They have. They've done it. They're not perfect, right? And so I think knowing that, what's the best way to deal with this most people? This is most people. So how do we deal with most people? Is the best way to help them not be unconsciously biased in a couple scenarios? Maybe could be better here, maybe could be better there. Ooh, that one, that was bad, right? is the best way to approach these folks to say, you're racist. That was wrong. You never do that. I can't believe you did that. That's so bad. You're a racist person. I blah, 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 blah. You blah, blah, blah. Is that the best way to get this person to realize that they've made a mistake and that or maybe there's just they can make some progress in X or Y or Z area. And I think that most of the time, the best way to approach folks is with some kindness, and it's not sexy. That's not something that major news media wants to pick up. No one wants to talk about empathy and kindness or some of the things. I'll just read them off because there's only a couple of them, but my suggestions were thoughtful dialogue, tact, empathy, bridge the gap, be proactive, and lead with kindness. And these things, it's not that I'm taking away from some of the more blunt, in your face messages and protests. We need that. We need that. That's great. And I think that there's a lot of tact to protests, and especially protests that cannot be ignored. And so I don't want to take away from that. But I do know that, especially with respect to the professional world and corporate boardrooms, that protest is not necessarily speaking to them. They're not like, it may speak to police officers because they have to deal with protesters. But with respect to corporate America, I don't know that that's the most effective way to get your coworkers to see you in the way that you would like to be seen, or to engage on these issues in the way that you would like them to. It's probably better to engage in thoughtful dialogue with them and kind of don't paint people into a corner, don't push people too hard, engage in a thoughtful conversation with some tact, right? Because people are good, and just come your way.
So this is a super pragmatic approach, which is part of what makes it so powerful. And if you're comfortable with it, are you comfortable with me making a connection between who you are as a person and how this is coming out?
Oh my goodness, of course, yeah.
So you said earlier this idea of like, I love myself, and so I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to, believe the most is possible for me. To me, that is the same level of consciousness that's allowing you to get to, people are good. Why would I not want the best outcome? So how can I get there?
Yeah.
And what often happens is that we want to maybe tough love ourselves, which is sometimes a good strategy, right? So you're a parent. Sometimes you need to be like hard line, like no, right? You need to be aggressive. Similarly with ourselves, sometimes we might need to be a little aggressive with ourselves, beat ourselves around a little bit. But the real beautiful outcomes comes from that self-love that's not tough love. Mm-hmm. And that's what I hear happening in how you're able to process this global kind of, like you said, it's a global issue. How's that resonate? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think that it has a little bit to do with that, just because confidence is a big deal. It's hard because it's the hardest thing to try to help people with, right? I know with my own siblings, who I love very, very much, and other people I've tried to mentor over the years, that's the tough thing, right? Because you can tell somebody, here's like, if you're a robot, like, here's what you should do, right? Like, you can give instructions that are like, if you were a robot and you did these things, you will succeed, and there's no arguing. And it's a little bit different. It's a little harder to get a human being to do those things and kind of buy in and believe, right? And you kind of go back and forth between, hey, do I try to get this person I'm mentoring to believe in me, right? Believe in my ideas and just kind of trust me? Or, is it belief in themselves that they really need? And I think that it depends. For some folks, and I think obviously what you want is belief in themselves, right? You want that. That's the best. But for some folks, they're not there yet. And I know for, my oldest younger brother, when I was mentoring him and helping him get through a couple things, he didn't have that yet. And he needed to just trust me for a little bit to kind of, and he just took my advice on a couple things and he didn't have it yet. But over the course of a year, he was like, oh, you were right. you were right that I am worth it and that I am valuable and that I am capable of doing things. You were right about that. And now I believe that. Right. And so I think we need to borrow confidence sometimes if we need to, and just give it a shot.
That's beautiful. Wow. Thank you for sharing that personal story. I think that's amazing. To create a space that your brother could come to that on his own. And yeah, sometimes it's not going to come quick, or people are going to borrow confidence. And as for you, you're still a young man who's very successful, who's, professionally successful, living a beautiful life. You probably should, next level, next level, next level. There's going to be some borrowed confidence up the line,
Yeah.
as preparing yourself to continue to step into this leadership, because that's really what you're doing. You're showing up as a leader in all levels of your life right now. As you prepare to keep stepping into leadership around these racial issues, what do you see for yourself? What's important as you keep stepping forward?
Well, I think continued growth for sure. I think that there's a level, I have to share, right? Because folks, if you don't understand me and what makes me, it doesn't. My personality, who I am, the way that I deal with adversity, I was born out of survival. It's all survival, right? And I think that it's tough to teach that. It's really difficult. For me, at various points in my life, I had no choice. I had to believe in myself and my crazy idea that something was going to work. Some crazy idea. I'm going to move. Yeah, mom. See you, mom. I'm going to move to Raleigh, North Carolina with 16 other boys. You don't know who they are. And this coach called me and I'm going to go. See ya. And you don't know, by the way, mom, you don't know who this coach is. And that's really crazy. That's a crazy level. And I think for me at that point and kind of moving forward to where I'm at now, I had to do that. And I think because, it's went well and I've learned along the way and had a lot of experiences, I now have learned I've kind of learned that, right? But I don't think that for everybody it's going to come that easy, and that's totally fine. I think it's baby steps, but I think just some of the ideas we already mentioned, just leaning to the side of believing on yourself, just leaning, honestly, if it's 50-50, because I think for a lot of people, this is big. This is so big. You don't have to be I am, I'm going to sound crazy.
Kanye West. You don't have to be like Kanye level.
No, yeah, right. And I'm it's a spectrum, right? I am I'm very confident in myself, and I'm over here. Kanye West is way of it, right? And you don't need to be way over here. You can just be literally, if it's 50-50, be 51. Just on the side of just give some deference to believing in yourself and just going for it, because failing isn't the end of the world. You're going to learn. I've failed so much, right? And that's what you don't hear about. You see the positives and you see the results, but you don't see the failures and how much learning and growth happens there, right? You got to be willing to fail.
So, there's so much wisdom when you speak. I'm sure you get that a lot, and it's a real privilege to get to hear, consume, and I'm yeah, right on. I agree. This is beautiful. When you imagine 10 years from now, and you've been living with this philosophy, you're in your 75-80 of confidence, what's happening for you in 10 years, and what's happening in this global issue in North America and Canada, which is a huge, what's going on? What's the vision?
Oh, well, that's a big question. To unpack that, I think for me, I want to be a great dad. I think that's a huge thing. I've had strange relationships with father figures in my life, and had a really difficult and tumultuous home life. And in some ways, I wear that like a badge. In some ways, that's really, I'm hard. I'm tough. I'm a tough guy, you know, not to, you know, but I'm a tough guy. I've been through it, and that I appreciate that adversity. With that said, you know, I feel that I've been through that so that my children don't have to go through that. And I want my children, I play basketball, don't love basketball. Newsflash, don't love it. It was a vehicle for me and it was all I had, right? But what my hope is for my children, and you know, when I think about growth in the future, that's the big thing. I want my children to be able to do whatever they love. I just want them to just live a life of, I want to do what I love. I just want them to feel free to just be who they want to be, think what they want to think, and just, you know, and not feel this burden of, you know, well, this is strategically the best thing I have to do, and like I have to do this because like I have no safety net. I want my kids to kind of feel that freedom of being able to do whatever they want to do and just feel love, right, from every direction, which, you know, it is one of those things. It's very difficult to you know, oftentimes great leaders and massive success does come from adversity, and you know, childhoods that had adversity. So that's always a tough thing. But I think with the right parenting, you can kind of balance that out. So anyway, so that's a goal of mine, to kind of try to figure that out, and it's really difficult. And I know that every parent loves their children and are trying to balance that. You know, don't want to spoil them, but want them to learn, and it's tricky, right? And so I'm going to engage in that very difficult and challenging endeavor, you know, in good faith. But you know, beyond that, you know, for me, it's really important to continue to set goals and continue to. I'm never satisfied and I'm never content. That kind of sucks, right? That kind of sucks because it's never there's never a moment where you can just kind of, I've done, but I don't feel that way. I don't know what that is. That's foreign to me. And I've learned to just accept that. I've for a long time tried to battle with that and be like, you should just be content. And you know what? I'm just not. And I don't know that I will be. I'm just not content. It's just, I think that's a blessing and a curse. And for me, I'm just going to continue to leverage it because it's not something that, to the extent that I can change it, I don't know that it's something that's good for me to change. I think that it's actually something that about myself that I've learned to just love and accept, that I'm not content. That's not what I am. And so I think for me, it's continuing to set goals, to challenge myself, and continue to try to really just do the most that I possibly can with the opportunities that are in front of me. And I think over the last 5 to 10 years, what those opportunities have varied greatly. I think right now I have a lot of opportunities in front of me, and so it's really exciting. And I'm just doing my best to maximize as much as possible everything that is in front of me that I can, and potentially along the way inspire others to do the same and take inventory of what they can control.
There's this like, I'm going to own my story. I'm going to own this part of me that maybe the world is like, no, you should be like X, or wouldn't life be better if you were like Y? And you're like, nope, like I kind of know who I am. I got it. It's right. Very powerful.
And live in the moment is one of those things too, right? Which it's tough because I'm a student of Zen meditation, Zen Mind, A Beginner's Mind, a book I've read probably 1,000 times. It's very antithetical. It's very opposed, really, to the view of my view, which is interesting. I love the book, and I do feel like I'm still a good student of the book, even though I don't think that way. But there's often there's a virtue that's advertised. Patience is one too. Patience as a virtue, right? And living in the moment as a virtue, right? These are virtues that are, you know, oh, this is a virtue. You know what? Not for everybody, right? For me, I love to live in the future. I love it. I love to think about what's going to happen tomorrow and next week and next month and next year. And I've learned through kind of having my mind there for a large period of each day that there's much more that can be predicted and game plan for than you might expect. Human behavior is very predictable, and you can actually come up with a pretty good game plan on how to go through life being in the future.
Chosen, this beginner's mind you're talking about, I'm also thinking and seeing this like yin yang, we got the yin yang symbol here, because what you're doing is you're living in the yin in your yang. Like it sounds like yang's like, oh yeah, I'm there. You just mentioned and highlighted, I love living in the future. I love, like, that's fun for me.
Yeah.
You're kind of like a balance point for so many people that live in the past. So if we actually looked at your life as not just your life, that you don't need to balance, you don't need to become someone who lives in the present or someone who lives in the past, because actually what you're doing and contributing to our society, this is a little bit wacky, but the balance point to the rest of us and a large portion of society who lives in the past, which is why you're able to present a very different, nuanced, critical thought around these jerseys, around how we respond to racial injustice right now. Thoughts, reflections, how does that feel?
Well, I think that that's very spot on, and I actually had not thought of it that way, but I think that that's exactly right, because really what I'm speaking to in a lot of ways with regards to the Forbes article is, there's a view that is very much in the moment, and it's angry. And I spoke to this, and really at the end of the day, the bottom line, the conclusion is, hey, the Black community is angry. The Black community is tired. They're sick and tired of not just racism and not just unconscious bias, which has happened for so many years, but of brothers and sisters being murdered in the streets. It's very, very troubling, right? It's people are angry. They're just angry. Like, it's just, they're beyond, like, no, forget about thoughtful discourse. I am very angry, right? Like, and that's totally fair, right? And, I think that has, the anger though, has dominated the news cycle. It's totally dominated the entire message. And I think that that's part of it. I do think, like, I'm not taking value away. That's honest. That's real. You're angry. Yeah. And you know what? You should be angry. That's great. And, I'm not trying to pass judgment on anybody who's angry. With that said, we have to evolve our thinking to, okay, I'm angry. And I've done this through my own life and dealing with various bouts of adversity, breaking my neck, different things. You're faced with it, and it sucks, and you're angry, and it's not fair. It wasn't fair for me to break my neck right after I got back from the Team Canada Olympic camp, right? I felt I was on cloud 9. I just practiced. All of my former teammates in that camp, that Team Canada camp, are all in the NBA right now. Every single one of them are in the NBA. That's hard to, it's tough, man. It's tough because you think highly of yourself and you think it's hard. It's not fair. They're all in the NBA. Like, literally, I'm the only one who's not, right? And so it's hard. That's not fair. That's not fair. What did I do? Right? You start thinking, you curse God or whoever, that you hold accountable. But I think that there's a next step after that. So you break your neck, right? And for me, I dealt with all of that. That was really hard, right? And I think the next step is, well, what do I do now? What do I have? What do I have at my disposal? What can I do? What's the best? And I used the robot analogy earlier, and I think that it's actually helpful because it enables you to be objective. Okay. It's very hard to be objective if you are in your own thoughts and feelings. Your subject are, right? The only way you can truly be objective is if you remove yourself from the entire equation. And so one of the things that I do as like a mental exercise when dealing with things like this and coming up with ways of approaching adversity is I think of, what if I was a robot if I was to program a robot, if the 10 smartest people in the world in AI were programming a robot to deal with the particular problem that I'm dealing with, right? If 10 PhD students in AI and like psychology and like, coaching and life goals and blah, 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 if they were all looking at my life and had inventory of my problems and solutions, potential solutions, what would they potentially come up with if they were programming a robot to deal with these issues? And I literally, it sounds so nerdy, but like I actually will go through the exercise of kind of what would you begin to program this being to be, removing yourself completely from it. And when I did that exercise in a hospital bed with a broken neck, kind of figuring out how to walk, it became clear that like what I had was education, and I had a scholarship. That was the one thing that I had. I may not ever play again, but I have a scholarship right now. Right now, I have a scholarship, and they can't take it away right now. And so I better get as much out of this as possible. And they told me, they're like, you know what, you can take the year off, you can take the semester off. I was in the hospital for a month. They're like, you know what, you're fine, come back next semester. I was like, no, I'm getting my money's worth. This is my money right now. I'm not taking classes, right? Please give me an extension on whatever I've missed, but I'm not dropping this class. And so I stayed in all my classes, but it's doing that. It's personalizing adversity and kind of thinking about what can I possibly do, removing anger and emotion in myself from the scenario. What can I do? And let's do all I can, do my best, right?
I love it, Braeden, because I think you're spot on in saying the anger, so valid, so good to let yourself feel like, why the hell me? All these other guys are in MBA. What's going, like, so totally okay. So right.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because when you can allow yourself to feel that and express it, look what you've come up with, this beautiful strategy that goes, okay, so that's true and real, and I can try something else as well. That's right. Amazing. It's real, and that comes from that self-love. Like, I love myself enough to accept that I'm pissed and let myself be pissed. I also love myself to figure something out about this. I love myself enough to like make some action out of it.
Right, and with respect, bringing it back to race, right? And I told this story before, but I think it's really, really important because it was something that taught me a tremendous amount. But while at Fresno State, not to knock them and throw them under the bus, but it happened. It happened, and it was very, very influential on for me. And I had a professor in the political science class, and political science was one of my favorite classes. I was really excited about it. So you got to have context here, right? I was in my first year. I was a freshman. I had so much to prove, right? Academically, I was so excited to just crush it, and I was so excited to be there. And loved poli sci. Knew I wanted to go to law school one day. So you got to think about all these contextual things. And the professor, and I spent so long on this paper. I was thinking about it. We're on the bus. I'm thinking about it. I'm asking people questions. I spent so much time thinking about this essay, and I turned it in, this paper, and I got an F, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I reread it over and over again. I sent it to my friends and family. I sent it to my uncle. He's a physician in Florida. I sent it to my uncle, or to my grandfather. He was a PhD in education. I sent it to my mom. I sent it to as many people who would read it, and I'm like, what did I do wrong? Like, I got an F. What? And they were all like, an F. Wow, it's a really good article. I don't understand. And nobody could really like figure it out. And I remember I went to the professor and I said, listen, what happened? Like, how did I get an F? This is really like, did I misunderstand like what I was supposed to write about? And I remember, I'll never forget, like it's had this imprint on me forever. He looked at me in this way and he was like, you didn't write this. You didn't write it. He just didn't believe, like, there's no way in his mind. Like, he's like, you didn't write this. And I was like, I did. Actually, I wrote this. Yes, I wrote this. Just me. I wrote this. Yes, actually. right? And there was no way. And that was just one of those moments where I realized he didn't see me. Like we were not vibing. We were not, like, he did not actually see me for who I was. And he didn't see me the way that I saw myself, right? And from then on, I started to kind of, and this is a smart professor. This is a tenured guy. This dude has published all sorts. This is not a dumb person. And you know what? Again, to give him some benefit, I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's had lots of student athletes in his class. I think a 6'8" dude with tattoos comes in and he's like, man, I get it. You did not believe I could have possibly done it. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, maybe you're right? But you were wrong today. And it made me realize that, you know, right? You were wrong today. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you were wrong today, but like you may have been right many times, right? And it made me realize that, because the first step for me was anger. The second step was put myself in his shoes, right? And then the third step was, well, what the heck do I do now? And the third step was, well, you know what? This is common and this is going to happen. And people are going to have that view of you because you are 6'9" and you are on the basketball team and you do have tattoos. And so that's going to happen. That's just how it is. And that's not something you can change. And it's going to be really frustrating, but you can't control it. So what do you do now, right? And so I started every single semester of every single class from then on. And you know, all the kids, all the goody two shoes kind of, you know, kids always do that. They line up and they introduce themselves and blah blah blah. And I made sure to do that. Along with those kids. I waited to the end because I knew mine was a little longer.
Braeden's like, I'm the only goody two shoes with the sleeve. Here
yeah,
I am.
I was coming through. I was like, I'm part of this group. You know what I mean? Believe what you may, right? But I'm actually part of this goody two shoes group that's just trying to do really well.
It's gonna get some freaking A's in your class, so get ready for my A paper.
I'm actually getting an A in this class. I know you didn't know that from looking at me, but I am. And so I would put together a little spiel. Hey, my name is Braeden Anderson. I'm on the basketball team, and despite any experiences you may have had in the past with student athletes, I really care about my education. I really care about it. I want to be a lawyer. I want to go to law school, and you know, I also want you to know that I know you don't get paid extra to deal with helping me make up exams because we're going to miss a lot of classes. And it just sucks because we have this really ridiculous travel schedule and it sucks. And I want you to know that I appreciate the extra effort that it takes to help me keep caught up, you know, to help me stay on pace and blah, blah, blah. Because it takes extra work and no one thinks about that, right? Student athletes miss a large portion of classes every semester. And there's a view towards teachers that they're just expected to deal with that. And I think that there's an animosity there and I could sense that. And so I wanted to speak to that. And I knew that what I was saying was spot on. And I started to kind of adjust it as I had conversations, and you can kind of read body language, but you could tell that you were largely like freaking spot on, right? When you saw their facial expression, you saw them kind of just like you could see them just like, oh, yes, thank you. Like they needed to hear it. And I don't pass judgment on them for needing to hear it. They did. They needed to hear it. And thank God they heard it. And I never had that problem again. Never.
Amazing. Wow, that's such a powerful story of acceptance and empathy of, yeah, I see why someone would have this, because we're human and it's truly, it's in our, you know, our neural behavior to make assessments and judgments and stuff like that. That's natural. We're doing that all the time. So to see that in a fellow human being and go, okay, I see that. And I love myself so much. And I know myself so well. And I have such a commitment to something that matters to me that I'm going to even deal with that. I'm going to take I'm going to put that onus on myself to love you as you are and see you and be empathetic to you. And I'm still going to do something with it.
Yeah. Because it's a goal-oriented way of thinking. It's just, what am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to do? And at the end of the day, we can't choose who our teachers are. We can, but not after you've already enrolled. You can drop. But like really, at the end of the day, I don't think that that's a good, you understand. To a large extent, you can't choose who your teachers are. And to a large extent, you can't choose who your bosses are. And to a large extent, you can't choose who your colleagues are. And so because of those things, it leaves us in a spot, right, where you kind of need to adapt, and you got to figure out a way to win with these people, and regardless of their flaws, right, or what you perceive to be flaws. And I think to a large extent, as you've kind of said, it starts with kind of loving yourself, right? And I think that's a step that I skip often. Like that's not the first thing I think about. That's really automatic for me, is like, you're gonna love me. we gotta figure this out. We gotta be friends. It has to happen. This has to go well. So we gotta figure it out, right? And so I kind of start that way. It's we gotta get along, because you're my boss, and it's gotta happen. Or you're my colleague, or you're my professor. So we gotta vibe. It has to happen. And however it needs to happen, I'm happy to help that along, right? But I think just starting from that premise of, I'm getting to wherever I'm going, like whatever your goal is, like that's happening. How it happens, like, could change. Like, I'm flexible.
So,
like,
Braeden, this is again that yin yang, because you're so confident and you know yourself so much, you're able to be humble, right? So I'm so like, it's hard to be humble when we actually are insecure. It is from a place of full self-security and self-ownership and that confidence to be able to humble yourself to achieve an objective and to be willing to listen.
Well, and so part of it, what's tough though, is even when you have it totally right, and this is a big piece that needs to be raised, okay? Because you're not going to be able to control it. You can't stop it. People will be haters. There's going to be haters. We got to talk about that really quick, because there will be haters. And it may be a spouse. It may be your mom. It may be your dad. It may be your best friend. It may just be, a group of friends. It may be all your best friends. But there will be people in your life with perspectives, with comments. And, those comments may not jive with what your goals are or what you're hoping to achieve. And there's a really interesting way of kind of trying to deal with that. That's a big thing. And I think that feeling of feeling like, I'm still going to do that. Like, even, I'll give you an example, again, back to my story to kind of peg this. But again, at Fresno State, my coach, when I told him, I was like, I'm going to play basketball while in law school. And he laughed at me. And he laughed at me in a way, because the context matters. Like, I could write this down and it doesn't like resonate. He laughed at me in a way that, like, in like the most traumatizing way. Like, he laughed at me in a way that, like, he really genuinely meant it. Like, he meant it. And not only did he mean it, but he had the credibility to mean it. He coached Kevin Durant at Texas. He was a 28, 30-year coach in the NCAA. He knew everybody. He was experienced and smart. And him laughing at you as a 19-year-old or whatever the heck I was like, wow, he thinks that I'm an idiot, right? And like, he has so much credibility, and like, he's probably right, but like, am I? And like, that is tough. And I think that was really tough for me, because he told me straight up, he's like, no college coach in the country is going to let you do that. What the heck are you talking about? You're crazy. Get out of my office. If you want to transfer, go ahead. Nobody will let you do that. Get the heck out of my office. Right? Like, that's how it was. And it was tough. I was like, holy smokes. And I had to look myself in the mirror and say, like, okay, like, do I really still believe in myself? Like, am I really, like, am I sure? Like, can I do this? And I think that that's an extreme example, but I think if I can go through that with someone with that much credibility, I think our parents often and our spouses and our brothers or sisters or friends, they don't have that level of credibility. They're not a 30-year coach, right, saying, I know coach, and he did. He probably knew most college coaches, and he's saying no one will let you do that, right? He has so much credibility. Like, that's a powerful thing. I think oftentimes our friends and family don't even have half of that or a quarter of that level of credibility on the issue, and yet we let their opinions totally lead the day, right? We let them totally just one comment, one like lukewarm comment about something that we think that we're capable of doing, and it's like, oh, I can't do it. You're right. There's no chance.
Okay, you got to tell us what happened. So you looked yourself in the mirror.
Story?
Yeah, you looked yourself in the mirror and you're like, okay, do I really buy? Can I still believe in myself? This guy with all this credibility, he said this. What next?
Well, it definitely made me look in the mirror and say, like, am I doing this? And okay, this is going to be really hard, right? So I take information. I was taking it in and processing it, right? You don't ignore it. You don't ignore information just because it's negative. You process it. And that's why I've always said, and I said earlier, criticize negative ideas the same way that you criticize positive ones. Don't be lopsided. And so I criticized his negative view the same way that I would have criticized any positive view. And what I led to was kind of what I mentioned earlier, is that the statistic, I was like, okay, no college coach will let me do this. But so essentially that means that he's never heard of this happening. And in his view, this shouldn't happen. And why might he think that? And I started to come up with kind of the population that might be even eligible to do something like this. And I kind of led to that math that kind of led to me to believe that, well, I don't know that what he said is correct given what I'm going to do, right? And so one thing that I learned from that was that I knew I was going to shoot this shot far and wide. I was going to apply to as many law schools as humanly possible. I was going to reach out to as many basketball coaches as humanly possible. And I was not expecting to hit 100. I wasn't expecting to hit 50. I was hoping to hit 1 out of 1,000, right? My batting average, I was not anticipating hitting a good percentage. I just wanted to hit 1 ball, just 1. I just need 1 hit right now. And I just focused on that.
He ended up with a pretty damn good hit, Braeden.
Well, Seton Hall's a great school, and it was one of those lucky situations where the athletic director, the dean of the law school was once the athletic director, which is, it's got to be the only case like that in the entire country. And so there's this great rapport between the athletic department and the basketball program, and you just don't see that ever. Mostly because there's never a reason for the dean of the law school and the athletic department to communicate. So they don't even know who each other are. Like a lot of calls, it was, okay, I don't even know who to call. Who's the dean of the law school? They got to go Google it, right? They don't even know who, right? You're talking to basketball coaches and they're like, oh man, I got to call some dean of a law school. Oh my goodness. And they don't even want to do it. Like some of them are like, I'm just not going to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll move on, right? But I kind of had to buy into that process, and eventually you get lucky, but it's not luck because you swung the bat so many times that it was like you had to hit 1, right? But kind of, what happened for me was that scenario was there had to be 1 law school and athletic program combination in the country that would be amenable to this. There has to be 1. And if there's not, what do I have to lose?
And how about like, win an Eastern Conference, like how about it be that one too, hey?
Yeah, that was pretty great. That was pretty great. Pretty great.
Oh my goodness. So inspiring. There's going to be haters, and yet if we can even get to that 51% of believing in ourselves, we've won.
51%, just 51. I think for most people, just get to 51%, right? And because that to me is the most important, because that's where it starts. Because at the end of the day, you just have to believe in yourself enough to swing the bat, just swing, just go for it, just do the thing, try, attempt, right? Fail, commit to failing. If you knew.
Hey Braeden, I'm back. I didn't hear you. 51% is what I heard at. My internet changed.
Oh, I was just gonna say,
everyone else heard you.
No, you're good. I just said, if you need to swing, right? You just need the 51%. You just need enough to do the actual act. You just need to make the attempt, right? You just need to swing. You gotta do it. You gotta try. You gotta commit to actually failing, right? You just gotta commit to doing it, right? Because that's gonna lead you down the path of, let's say you failed because X, Y, Z. You're gonna learn next time. I think your odds of success are probably higher, right? Like it just takes you down the path of actually succeeding, regardless of what happens in that first swing of the bat.
Willing to swing, and willing to swing 1,000 times and only hit once, like you said. So
Right.
Braeden, I mean, thank you, and I'm so appreciative of your time, your energy, your honesty with us, your authenticity. You have a billboard. Let's say you get a billboard. You can put 1,000 of them across the U.S. What's your billboard say?
So I am the secretary of the corporate law section at the Metropolitan Black Bar Association. And they've been doing a lot of really, really great things. Metropolitan Black Bar Association, they support Black lawyers in New York City and the surrounding area. That's an issue for me that's close to heart. I'm very passionate about the promotion and advancement of Black lawyers, and they do a lot in terms of training and programming and awareness and even representation for Black issues and issues that face Black lawyers. So that's an organization that I'm really, really passionate about, and that I'd probably put on that list.
Beautiful. And that's where we'll make a donation. I'll make a donation in your name too. That's why
I appreciate that. That's really nice of you that you're doing that. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to get to expose your story, hear your story. I think I'm so excited for what you continue to do with your platform. And I also am so excited for what evolves in this. I own that I'm never going to be content, and I'm going to love my life. It reminds me a lot about David Goggins. If you haven't read Can't Hurt Me, I'm like, I want to send it to you as a gift.
Please send it to me. I haven't read that, so please do.
I will. That would be my honor.
I'll reimburse it.
Oh my goodness. You can pass it on to somebody that maybe your maybe your brother or something. You could pass it on.
Maybe we'll do a book exchange. Maybe I'll send you a book. We'll swap.
Speaking my language is beautiful. So thank you, Braeden. Is there anything, we've covered a lot of your story, and you've shared so much of yourself with us, and I'm so honored for that. So thank you deeply from my heart. I want to let you have the last word before we go off live. Let's hear from you.
I don't know that I have like a ton new to say. I would just, implore people to just believe in themselves. And, when facing the most difficult challenges that life has to offer, just the first step is to take inventory of what you can control, and then dedicate all of your energy towards executing to the best of your ability to the best of your ability with respect to those variables that you can control. Because I think there's a lot of talk about things that we can't control. And I think that there's not enough focus on, okay, but like, that's cool, but like, you can't control that. So like, what is it that you can control? Like, we don't focus on that enough. And I think individually, we all need to kind of just think about like, what is actually in my control? What do I control? And because people are on two sides of the fence. There's people who believe that they can control more than they really can, and they're too hard on themselves, and et cetera, et cetera. And then there's folks who don't think that they can control anything about their life at all, and they think that everything's just happening to them. And the truth is that somewhere in the middle, and it takes thoughtful consideration and critical thinking to identify those particular variables. And I would just urge people to, it sounds really boring, like take inventory of variables you can control, but like this is really like really important. Take that inventory, really identify what you can control in your life. Focus all of your energy on those things. And if you can't control it, please let it go.
Thank you. Take inventory on what you can control. If you can't control it, let it go. Thank you, Braeden Anderson. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Live here. Oh my goodness.